We've now been watching Kane in the WWE for 22 years, but there's still a lot to learn about both the character and the man behind the mask. Here are 15 things most fans don't know about Kane. Don't be a demon, and be sure to do the moral thing. Follow the Sportster on YouTube by clicking the subscribe button now. Senior Kane. Although Glenn Jacobs is 100% American, he was actually born on April 26, 1967, just outside of Madrid, Spain. How in the name of Trump is that possible, you ask? Jacobs was part of the United States Air Force family stationed abroad at the time, meaning he was technically born on U.S. soil. Soon afterwards, the Jacobs family relocated to the St. Louis, Missouri area, where a young Glenn eventually attended Northwest Missouri State University, now known as Truman State University, and earned a degree in English literature. As for jumped into wrestling, that came about when Jacobs worked at a group home for the mentally challenged, where a coworker encouraged him to pursue the profession. Glenn moved south to follow this new dream, where he was trained by future ECW, WCW, and WWE wrestler Dean Malenko. To date, Senior Kane is only WWE champion born in Spain. He shoots, he scores. When Glenn Jacobs attended Northwest Missouri University, he didn't need to pay a penny in tuition. That's because he scored a full ride on a basketball scholarship, and according to his state and accomplishments, it was well deserved. Back at Bowling Green High School, the Tall Center was named to the All-East Missouri Conference and All-Northeast Missouri teams in both his junior and senior years, and averaged an impressive 16.4 points and 12.4 rebounds per game in his final season before graduation. In his 3 years at Bowling Green, Jacobs was also named All-District every season and amassed an astonishing 1,062 points by the end of his tenure. But that's not the only reason Northeast Missouri State rewarded him, as Jacobs also excelled off the court. The man who would become Kane was actually a member of the National Honor Society who graduated 11th in his class of 103 students. Kane, you remember? Some WWE superfans might remember that before becoming the Demon Kane, Glenn Jacobs temporarily wrestled as Isaac Yankem DDS, Jerry Lawler's private dentist, who was called in to rid the promotion of Bret Hart. Although the gimmick only lasted a year between the summers of 1995 and 96, Yankem became something of a jobber to the stars during his tenure, which included losses to The Undertaker, Jake the Snake Roberts, Mark Merrill, and The Ultimate Warrior, a steel cage match, and a participation in the 1996 Royal Rumble. However, this wasn't the character Jacobs actually debuted with. Instead, he made his first televised WWE appearance on February 20th, 1995 episode of Raw as Mike Unabomber, an obvious nod to Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber and serial killer who was eventually caught by the FBI in April 1996. This first gimmick only lasted about 6 months before it was soon scrapped. Candy Cane. Even before joining the WWE in 1995, Glenn Jacobs competed in the Memphis-based United States Wrestling Association, where he first met his future dentist client, Jerry Lawler. In this promotion, Jacobs temporarily adopted the gimmick of a heel named the Christmas Creature. Devised by Lawler's son Kevin with some seamstress work by Jacobs' own mother, the gnarled covered Christmas Creature looked like he was 50% Grinch, 50% enormous elf, and 100% a terrible decision. Then again, the USWA tried to push a lot of crazy characters back in the day, like the Tiger, Lord of the Volcano. If you want to see Kane's holiday horror in action, numerous clips are available on YouTube, including one in which Santa appears and is almost immediately assaulted, which must have been very confusing for several children who were clearly in attendance at the event. Kane's mane. Believe it or not, the long curly hair formerly rocked by Kane at the beginning of his career was in fact his own. For fans who have watched almost every WWE match in history, this may seem obvious, yet we still get questions all the time about whether or not Kane's mane was authentic. Then again, back in the 90s, Kane was rarely seen unmasked, save for a couple instances like when the McMahon-Helmsley faction jumped him backstage and ripped off his mask back in the 2000s. Another time at that year's SummerSlam, courtesy of The Undertaker. Even then, audiences weren't given a clear shot of Kane's face and head until he finally unmasked himself in the ring in 2003, when he did have a wig attached to the mask and had cut his actual hair down to a short curly mop. He soon shaved it all completely and hasn't looked back since. Are you in good hands? Although Kane's wrestling career has been incredibly successful, Jacobs wanted to make sure his family was secure for the future, so he and his wife Crystal opened an Allstate insurance branch. The company is called Jacobs Insurance Association and is located in Halls, Tennessee, that state which the family has called home for more than 2 decades. In case you're curious, the agency's services are actually quite diverse, and they offer everything from home and commercial insurance to car and RV insurances. All those years watching him in the ring, you'd probably never guess that Kane would sell insurance. Unless, of course, it was life insurance that gets paid out after he destroys you, which, by the way, is also covered at the Jacobs Agency. Allstate always ends its commercials by reassuring you that you're in good hands with the company, but they never mention that those hands are also capable of delivering throat-crushing and bone-breaking choke slams. The Demons Lair. After Glenn Jacobs got his insurance branch up and running, his family relocated to be closer to the office. Although this was a bit sad, as Jacobs had had his dream home custom built, when he had to put it up for sale, fans around the world got an exclusive peek into the Demons Lair. And man, was it impressive. Set on a 78-acre estate, the $800,000 abode measuring 6,924 square feet has a quarter-mile long driveway that climbs about 250 feet to reach the hilltop home. The estate is also equipped with a swimming pool, koi pond, and trails for hiking and biking. Inside, the master bedroom is so fancy and beautiful that it's difficult to imagine the monster using it. What we can definitely see Jacobs using, however, is the finished basement equipment with a poker table, foosball table, pool table, and a wet bar, and the 2,400 square foot garage that he converted into an enormous gym. Jealous? Because we are. Now that we've reached the halfway point, let's pause for a Kane quiz. In between his Isaac Yankem and Kane character, Glenn Jacobs briefly appeared in the WWE while impersonating another famous wrestler. Can you remember who it was an impression of? Stay tuned until the end to find the answer. Kane the Champion. We all know Kane has had his fair share of victories, but did you know that the Devil's Favorite Demon has won a total of 18 championships in the WWE? First and foremost, he's a 3-time world champion who has won the WWE Championship, WWE World Heavyweight Championship, and the ECW Championship 1 time each. Kane also owns 12 tag team titles that he won with the likes of The Undertaker, Big Show, Mankind, Daniel Bryan, X-Pac, Rob Van Dam, and the Hurricane. Finally, he has also won the Intercontinental title twice and the Hardcore Championship once. His first big win came at the King of the Ring 1998 when he defeated Stone Cold Steve Austin in the main event match with some help from Paul Bearer. Of course, in a typical brotherly fashion, the big star of the night was The Undertaker, who, along with Mankind, stole the show with their now infamous Hell in the Cell match. Kane the Thespian. Kane has of course been an actor in the ring for as long as we've known him, but Glenn Jacobs started branching out his acting career a little more than a decade ago. It all started at Taboo Tuesday back in 2004 when Kane faced Gene Snitsky after the latter caused Lita's aforementioned storyline miscarriage. During the match, Snitsky struck Kane with a steel chair that was said to have crushed his larynx, which allowed him time off to star in See No Evil, the first major film produced by WWE Studios. Since then, Kane has also had brief roles as Titan on the Superman prequel series Smallville. He played Tinker Lutz in the SNL MacGyver spoof MacGruber. He starred in the 2014 sequel to See No Evil, and he played a police lieutenant in the 2016 film Countdown, alongside fellow wrestler Dolph Ziggler. And let's not forget his voice acting in the Scooby-Doo WrestleMania crossover cartoon. Kane's commercial. Before he had his first TV show or film role, Kane was cast in a commercial back in 2001. And no, we don't mean Glenn Jacobs appeared unmasked and incognito. The Kane character was the actual star. Not only that, but the ad in which the creepy sinister demon was cast was for Chef Boyardee Beefaroni. The kids' food company was looking for a way to promote their new extra-large pasta pieces, so they chose the 7-foot-tall wrestler. In the commercial, an apron-wearing Kane strolls into the kitchen, grabs 4 Chef Boyardee cans at once, and summons fire in order to simultaneously open and heat them. After the narrator does his spiel, the camera cuts back to Kane, who's shown attempting to eat a bite of the beefaroni, but can't because his mask covers his mouth. If this ad had been a year later, the joke wouldn't have worked, as that's when Kane first debuted his half mask. The Not-So-Mini Kane. Since we already mentioned Kane's role in the 2006 WWE film See No Evil, let's examine an interesting tidbit about the movie that few fans know about. As told by former WWE creative team member Dan Madigan, according to Madigan, See No Evil director Gregory Dark called him out of the blue one day during pre-production with a problem. McMahon, Dark explained, had suggested for the film. Although Madigan was quick to dismiss Dark since it's technically Vince's movie, the director insisted on explaining the issue. Apparently, McMahon said he liked the film to feature a scene that not only exposes the member of Kane's character, but Vince wanted it to be 3 feet long. Keep in mind, this is a dark, grisly horror film and not a comedy. Thankfully, the script ended up being rewritten shortly after this incident, and the boss's suggestion fell through the cracks. Citizen Kane. Although the character Kane has committed kidnapping in the past, Glenn Jacobs is actually as pro-freedom as one can get. He is an active libertarian, meaning he is in favor of less government intervention and as much personal freedom as possible, as long as it doesn't infringe on the freedom of anyone else. Among other organizations, Jacobs is a member of the Free State Project, which aims to settle 20,000 like-minded individuals in New Hampshire in order to create a libertarian electorate stronghold, and he even spoke at the organization's 2009 New Hampshire Liberty Forum. Jacobs also routinely gives speeches, participates in interviews and podcasts, and pens articles supporting or condoning various policies and endorses politicians and commenters such as Ron Paul, Tom Woods, Harry Brown, John Stossel, Peter Schiff, and Maury Rothbard. He even runs his own blog in order to publish his thoughts, which is called Adventures of Citizen X. Candidate Kane. When we said before that Kane is active in politics, we meant it. After much speculation and years of rumors, Glenn Jacobs finally decided to run for office in March 2017. He currently has his sights set on the mayoral seat of Knox County, Tennessee, which will become vacated next year after current Knox County Mayor Tim Bruchert reaches his term limit. Although the actual election won't take place until May 1, 2018, Jacobs is already busy preparing a nominating petition, which is due in November if he wishes to continue his candidacy. If elected, candidate Kane says he will focus on attracting jobs and businesses to the area, and in true libertarian fashion, he aims to keep government out of people's lives as much as possible. In order to reach a more mainstream audience, however, Jacobs will run as a member of the Republican Party. If you have trouble picturing Kane as a politician, just check out his campaign videos on YouTube. Kane's Book of World Records. With all the time Kane has spent competing with WWE, he has amassed a large number of records over the years, both good and bad. For instance, did you know that Kane holds the all-time record for the most WWE appearances? As of now, according to ProFightDB.com, he has at least 1,630. Some consider this unbreakable. However, with this, there's also a negative. Since Kane has been around for so long, he also owns the record for the most losses in Raw history. Going back to the positives, he was the first wrestler to win and cash in on a Money in the Bank briefcase in the same night, and has competed in every Inferno match. For one last stat, Kane is also the leader when it comes to the Royal Rumble eliminations, as the Big Red Machine has knocked out at least 44 competitors in the annual tournament, including 11 in a single night. Kane's kids. For a guy who has played a deranged demon loner for more than 20 years, Kane clearly has a pretty normal life. While other wrestlers spent their prime years betting as many women as possible, or men in case of some divas or homosexual wrestlers, Jacobs has been married for nearly his entire WWE career. After just 6 months in the big leagues, he tied the knot with Crystal Massara Goins on August 23, 1995, and the two have been together ever since. They have 2 children from Crystal's previous marriage named Devin and Arista has even blessed them with 2 grandchildren named Madison and Cooper. In addition to his actual family, Kane also spends a lot of time doing charity work at the East Tennessee Children's Hospital in Knoxville, and from what we've heard, he even treats random fans on the streets and in airports like their family. Do you remember who Kane briefly impersonated back in 1996? That would be Diesel, aka Kevin Nash. At the time, he was paired in a tag team with Rick Bogner, who was impersonating Scott Hall's Razor Ramon character. Did we miss any interesting Kane facts? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like and share this video. For more wrestling clips, follow the Sportster on YouTube now.